What is going on, everybody, and on here? And it's time to spend a little bit of time, take a step back and look at the forest from the trees. And when it comes to the current Pokemon market, there's a little bit of panic out there, a little bit of an air pocket. Things are getting a little soft. And what I like to do is take a look at some of your higher quality assets. And this is something I haven't looked at since early October. So it's Pokemon Center ETBs. And what's interesting, and we'll go through there is before Journey and there's not before Journey. So we can just, if you want to talk about quality of assets, we can call it BJ good, no BJ bad. And the reason why Journey is so important is that is the first set that rotates in 2028, whereas Prismatic Evolutions rotates in 2027. So effectively, you have a whole extra year of reprints. Regardless of what gets reprinted in Q1, the size, magnitude, whatever, there is a 100% certainty that the Journey and post-Journey sets, or the not BJ sets, are going to get reprinted. And obviously, there's been a lot of discussion about the sets that rotate out in April, which is SV1 through 4.5, which is Paldean Fates. But as we go through this on the Pokemon Center ETB, front, it really starts to show the quality of assets and how much product have churned through the system. Because what we're seeing in a lot of these areas is a lot of supply has come into the market, which has pushed the pricing down. And what's really, really nice with Pokemon Center ETBs is we can see where the price is and we can see what the supply is. And it's very, very easy to isolate because there's not a whole lot of traffic. I mean, there's obviously some traffic on TCG Player. Or I'm sorry, on eBay, but generally speaking, a lot of the activity goes through TCG Player, especially on the older sets. So I did the month-over-month change here, and this is based on August. So instead of looking week over week and this and that, I just said, okay, as of the end of August, so we have September, October, and the first week of November, so call it 9 weeks, 9 and change. What has the performance looked like of these products? And there's something not right here. So T3 minus R3. Why is this showing up as a negative? Okay, there we go. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so you have your SV bases. I mean, you're up 30, 40% and 37% in basically 9 weeks. Paldea Evolved is down a little bit. Now, if we go back here to 830, this is like the peak of the bubble of a lot of these, which is a really good measuring point because now we can see as things normalize, what has the market really sold off to? Because this is most likely, I don't want to say a floor because you never know, but this is probably a normalized price for these sets. So Paldea Evolved is down 27%, Obsidian down 21%, SV 151 down 5%. So from $1,000 to $940, almost nothing. And this is absolutely zooming. Roaring Moon. And what's super interesting is these Paradox Rift ETBs or PC ETBs are both over $200. So Roaring Moon up 2.5%. Iron Valiant down 4.5, I guess 190, whatever, close enough. Paldean Fates down 29%. Again, 590 was a buyout spike. Same with Walking Wake, down 20%, 21%. But you have Iron Leaves up 8%, Twilight up 15%, Shrouded up 13%. Now Stellar is down 21% because, again, these were buyouts here for Stellar and Surging, and they all got bought out in the same week. So that's down 21%. Surging is down 20%. But again, Surging got bought out from the low 200s to 300, and now it's sold back down 20%, but it's still up 20% from the 200 mark, which is effectively where it was when the buyout started. So it's very easy to see how the effectively the price curve it shifts every time there's one of these buyouts. And yes, it does revert to the mean to a certain extent, but it doesn't go completely back. It almost never does. So Prismatic 3.5%, which is great because it spiked way up and it hasn't retraced the whole way. Journey Together 9%, Destin 22%. Obviously, this one's gone absolutely bonkers. Black Bolt 4%, White Flare 9%, which, this is when they first came out. They spiked a little bit in early October. These prices still, in my opinion, are way too high. And then, the Mega Gardevoir and Lucario down 12%, 21%, as you would expect. But the most important thing, in my opinion, is the market's soft. We're coming off effectively highs in the last 2 months on these products. And we would have expected a ton of product to come to market, but it hasn't happened. And this is where it's super important, because this is a fairly strong indicator that the supply of this product, for the most part, is dried up. So there's not going to be hundreds and hundreds of these coming to market at the current price point. That doesn't mean if these go up another $200 each, that isn't more that comes to market. The products are kind of fluid, right? So I think what's interesting is the fact that everybody, generally speaking, who's purchased these from the Pokémon Center has absolutely massive gains. So they're either holding because they recognize the value and the potential for these. They've opened them, in which case they're destroyed, or they've already sold them long already. So to somebody who's most likely going to hold them, or they've ripped them and destroyed them. So SV base 32, 23 for the Miraidon SV base. And again, the sell-through is way down on these. You're looking at between 10 and 30 on most of these in the last month. But since there's not that much supply there, that's okay. 62 Obsidian Flames, 54, 151. You can see just based on the numbers here, the buyout, but even the numbers in the beginning of October, we're up a little bit. 1 here, 2 there. We're up, 16 on 151, which is $1,000. But more importantly, the Paradox Rift ones, 29 and 36. Paladin Fate 65, and this had an astronomically high print run, 135 at least. That's just what we know from the data that we were able to scrape from Pokémon Center. So that at the very least, it's probably higher than that. If I had to guess, only 65 on the market. And then you get the Temporos, 38, 39, 77 Twilights. This had 20,000 plus dumped on the market in December. Now, granted, that was 10 months ago, but this has dried up so quickly. Shrouded Fable 134, down at 140. This is getting back to an absolute must buy. It really is, especially as Shrouded. I mean, the regular ETBs are $81, and they're moving volume wise. It's not crazy volume, but they're not going backwards. They have Stellar 55 of Stellar left, and that's in spite of the fact that at Nationals in New Orleans, I believe, they sold these. Surging 105, but then you get into 217 of Prismatic, and this has, I know I have 165,000 here. I guarantee this is probably multiples of the 165,000 that they've sold, because they have had 3 or 4 different restocks of Pokemon Center now. So again, you get to Prismatic and beyond, the economics of each one of these is going to change, because the supply is going to be exponentially higher, in my opinion, and just based on what we're seeing in the market. And of course, Pokemon, the Pokemon Company adjusting to the demand of these products. But Journey, only 85 here. This was a reasonable print run, most likely. But then you get to Destin, 119, Black Bolt only 73, White Flare 113, which I thought was interesting. I would have expected a little bit more, because the promos in these kind of suck. And the packs just, they're okay. I think they're going to age well, but right now they're just okay. And then 103, 108 are the 2 most recent ones, so really nothing to see there. But you can see all these new sets, there's a ton of these. And everything that is before Journey, except for Prismatic, it's getting eaten up. It really is. So moving on to the promos. And again, this is where it's super fascinating, because I did the math, and I did the math based on the change from August 30th, which was the peak of the sealed, to today. And most of these cards are still up now. the Paldea Pikachu, the Charmander from Obsidian, the Mimikyu from Paldean Fates. Now, granted, some of these are all coming off buyouts, but the 151 Snorlax is up 19%. Miraidon, Koraidon, 27, 51%. Go ahead, look at Paradox, 21 and 28% for the two that nobody wants. Iron Leaves 33%. Fluttermane, 13%. It's up. TMS Gokupon's up 36% now. Shrouded Petron, again, don't sleep on this set. I would probably wait for it to cool off a little bit more, but I am certainly going to be in there swooping again. Surging Knockdown, 24%. Magneton up 25%. There's a ton of these out there. Then you have the Eevee, Zora, not much there. The Wobbuffet. Wobbuffet's it's an interesting one because I don't think a lot of people ripped their Destined Pokemon Center ETBs because everybody knew what they were worth and what they're going to be. So you only see 63 here. And granted, there have been a ton of buyouts on here. But even if you go up to the seal, there's only 119. So I think a lot of these are parked. And I think Destin is going to be a little unique from the perspective of, yes, there is more supply, but there's also exponentially more demand than probably any of these sets except for 151, to be quite honest. Black Bolt, the Thunderous Tornadus, don't give a shit about these. And then, the Alakazam, the Riolu, they're both down a little bit. But again, we look at the quantities here. The quantities aren't crazy. Now, what we see early on here, you can see there is a reasonably high increase in the number of these. And I think this is really up until probably Stellar and Surging. People were buying these and they were ripping them because the market for Pokemon Center ETBs, especially in the collectible space or as a unique collectible, it hadn't quite developed yet. So I think it's really, really fascinating because, in the early days, there's going to be far less sealed than there is for the rest of these, and far more promos, more singles. And then, once you get to really Surging, now Surging was unique because people could rip it, grade the promo. Prismatic, probably the same. But after that, there's probably going to be more sealed and less of this. But even so, you look at the Paradox, not that many. I mean, 86, 63, nothing crazy. The Mimikyu, 126. But again, a lot of these got ripped. The Petron up to 126. I mean, people are just dumping the Shrouded Fable stuff here. And it's it's super interesting. And then, look at the Black and White, 134 and 191, which is a crazy high number, especially for singles. I've seen numbers that high for the Pokemon Center sealed ETBs. I haven't seen them that high for the singles. So a lot of people ripped them, which is really, really interesting. And then the last part of this, which is what I like to do, is you take the PC ETB, the regular ETB, the promo, and here all you're doing is you're taking the regular ETB divided by 9 times 11. So you're prorating for the 11 packs, which is what's in the PC ETB. You're adding in the promo, and then you're subtracting it from the Pokemon Center ETB. So a negative value means that the Pokemon Center ETB is trading at a premium of buying the near mint promo and just buying the packs in a regular ETB. And then if it's positive, it means the Pokemon Center ETB is a much better deal. So these guys are all astronomically high, and it's really, really interesting that the 5 earliest are the 5 that have the highest premium. Now, the Paradox one's not quite, but that's because the ETBs have gone up substantially. And I do want to point that out because this piece here, this is kind of the most fascinating part about this. Every single one of these ETBs, except for 3, has increased or is flat since August 30th. And that's in a soft market. Now, Paldean Fates is down $11, but it was at $240. And again, that set was getting hit hard with a buyout. And then Twilight and Stellar, both down $3, and that's because we had a fairly substantial dump of ETBs in the market. And don't look now, but there's still 600, 700, 800 of these on TCG Player. but the sell-through rate is absolutely through the roof, which is really, really, really interesting. But from a value perspective, again, Shrouded still there, Stellar, Journey, not that much else, quite honestly. It's the megas are there just because the promo price. I think the promos probably go down a little bit in the near term, but regular ETBs, and I don't talk about this that much. You have regular ETBs for SV base at $85. The booster box is $220. Now, we don't need to talk about how the Evolve Scarlet there, but Paradox Rift. Those are the old prices, $90 and $94. Paradox Rift, Roaring Moon is $110. The booster box is $240. Like, in what world is the booster box not underpriced by probably 50%, maybe more, if this is where the ETBs are going to be priced? I just find it absolutely fascinating how expensive these ETBs are. Temporal, $90 each, Twilight, $70 again, Twilight and Surging, $70 and $75 respectively, because they just got dumped. Stellar Crown, $90, Shrouded, $81, Prismatic, $134. Everybody talks about that. But Journey's back to $86, which is great. Destined, everything beyond here is probably going to get dumped on at some point. But again, Temporal and more importantly, Paradox Rift, $110 ETBs on a box that's selling for $240 right now. So either this is way underpriced, or the booster or way overpriced, or the booster boxes are way underpriced. So anyway, I think it's really, really fascinating, because if you look at really the high quality asset where it's not super liquid, so people can't theoretically dump it, but we're not seeing a lot of supply come on the market. In fact, these older sets, the BJ sets, we're flattish on supply in the market. And while the prices have come down a little bit, and the sell-through has slowed down a little bit, there is not a ton of product coming to crush the market, which is really, really positive, because as we work through this, and we always do, there's not going to be a whole lot of inventory when these kind of tick up again. And if the price gets down to a point where you're comfortable, it's not a bad place to sink dollars. So anyway, guys, hopefully this was interesting. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Discord, and have a great Saturday night.